Welcome to day 6, module 6 of how to buy your first rental property in Cleveland in 2026-2027. So today we're talking about finally areas to look in the greater Cleveland. So Cleveland in general is not one market. This is true of many, but Cleveland may be more than almost any other area. I remember for years, outsiders love to invest in Cleveland because there's a huge delta between properties selling at their higher end and properties selling at the lower end. And there's a lot of opportunity in like shifting areas of the market. And so you could sometimes find a house right in one area and get it to the condition of the area right next to it and create a lot of value that way. And so for as long as I can remember, Cleveland was a market that could be done in. And that's a good thing, but also I think one of the things to remember in Cleveland is that, especially in some of the lesser areas, you'll find little pockets that you think maybe that's nicer. Remember, in those areas especially, you're only one block from crack houses or one block from the worst that you can think of. So the worst parts of that same neighborhood are always that close to it. So what it means is that two streets could mean a completely different tenant quality, different risk, different outcomes. And it's also harder for someone from outside to see like, hey, is the real estate agent or wholesaler that's feeding me this property, were they really honest when they said, can I really trust them when they said this is such and such great of a neighborhood? Or they described that there's too much opportunity to say, well, it's really this when it's not. And so that's one of the reasons why you really want to take a look. And usually it's better just to not think to yourself, well, maybe it's better than it really looks when I look around. Does that make sense? So you should leave those type of finer grained decisions to people that maybe have personal experience. And even those that live here, I live in the Cleveland area, but Cleveland's a decent city, as all the suburbs. And I don't have personal experience, not even business experience in every single street, every block. So there's going to be just levels of expertise that won't be had by any professional. And they're going to think it's good and it's not, or perhaps there's some hidden motivation for them to see it a certain way. So again, just be careful, but here's some rules. Okay. So, and this is what we look at even when we decide whether we're going to accept a property in the Cleveland area for management, because we can't manage certain properties. It doesn't make financial sense. As managers, we can't make money there, right? And to some extent, we might be able to find out how to make money, but then you can't, right? We don't want to be in a position where you lose and we win as property managers. So by looking at our own rules, I think it gives you a good idea of what rules you also should have. Because if a property manager won't accept it, you need to think, what expenses is it going to cost me? Okay, so hard rules for us. The city of East Cleveland. Now, for those outside, the city of East Cleveland is not the same as the east side of city of East Cleveland is a zip code that some have said, I'm not sure 100% sure if this is the case, but I believe it when I drive through. It's the single worst zip code in the whole state of Ohio for corruption. And yet, I'll say that, and unfortunately, I get a lot of calls. Could you manage my property in the city of East Cleveland? We pretty much don't do it at all. I will say I'm not a black and white type of guy in terms of decision making. I will consider almost anything. Pretty hard rule, nothing in East Cleveland. I might relook at it occasionally. It's not like there's nothing there that could ever make sense, but it's hard for a whole lot of reasons. And one is just the government itself is very corrupt and they don't have any money. Or they don't have much money, right? They're very underfunded. So from police to everything else and most people in the school systems are, of course, bad as well. And so most people, if they have a choice, they're not going to live there. So even if it's a beautiful house and super nice, perhaps you could say instead of a D and an F grade, the A house makes it actually a C grade. Does that make sense? In an F neighborhood, or maybe the block's a little better, plus it's a nice house. We can look at exceptions, right? And I'll get to a little bit more how I grade this, but I stack these rules, right? So the area, it starts with the area, but then there's other things that stack and multiply risk. So the first thing is the area, and along with the city of East Cleveland, most of the east side of Cleveland, which the east side of Cleveland, by the way, is bigger than the west side, but most of the east side of Cleveland, there's just a lot of urban decay, a lot of issues. Now there's some development there. I will go more on the east side of Cleveland than I will the city of East Cleveland. Specifically, I prefer north of 90. So 90 is the northern highway. There's two east-west highways. 90 is the northern one. And on the east side, if you go north of 90, so one of the neighborhoods is called Collinwood. There's a movie called Collinwood. If you wanted a little entertainment and also learn a little bit watch the movie Collinwood, right? But Collinwood, the movie, is talking about the ghetto, essentially, what people will call that, the ghetto. And if you go to North Collinwood, which is above 90, which is most of any east side above 90 is mostly North Collinwood. You'll see it's quite a bit nicer. You just cross over that highway, and for whatever reason, it's towards the lake. It's a little section. Sections of it are even more desired than the next suburb over. So that's North Collinwood. So North Collinwood's good. South Collinwood, hands down. Thumbs down, right? And by the way, a little vignette. When we were growing a property management company, we started with nothing. And in 3 years, my partner and I got to almost 800 units. Okay. We weren't real discerning about units we brought on. And we had 1-bedroom efficiencies all the way up to like nicer suburban properties. At the time, about 15 years ago, like a really nice rent was like 2,000 in the city of Westlake. That was like our nicest one, right? Now we have much higher rents, but we did a phone study because we're getting thousands of calls a month. We're like, what is going on? Let's try to figure this out. This is overwhelming. What can we do? And what we found in that phone study, and I want you to listen to this, tells you everything you need to know about how grades of property work to your own personal profitability. So in the phone study, we found that depending on how you calculate it, is 10 to 1, and maybe even if you went to the real low end and the real high end, 20 to 1 service calls between your lowest class and your highest class unit. Think about it. From our perspective, as a service business, our cost is the time we spend, okay? So as a business owner, my cost is service. Now think about this. Lowest revenue per unit in terms of a percent of rent is gonna come from those lower end because that's lower rent, okay? So you have 10, maybe even 20 times the cost in some of the most extreme edges to manage a unit that then, and that's just like, it's not exact cost, but I'm saying like at least the time, even administrative cost, right? That doesn't include the other costs and the risks, like extreme risk. You have to think that this is the type of math is not linear. That when you go down a grade, it's an order of magnitude. In other words, you're multiplying risk, multiplying cost, multiplying. So you go down a grade, let's say C grade is where we make most of our money. And that typically is C grade, right? Typically lower credit still, working class people, not real great credit, but they have jobs, right? The D's and the F's are just dramatically higher risk, dramatically higher crime. Not a little bit more, not like, oh, it's just 1% more. Nah, it's like way more likelihood that someone's gonna get shot, way more likelihood that someone's not gonna pay rent, way more likelihood that you can't find anybody with any credit score, let alone a good one, right? You're just looking for people that aren't axe murderers, people that you're going to have to play a lottery and it's going to be a hard one. And so when I'm talking about grades of property, why not to do it? This is what I'm talking about. You shouldn't do it because the numbers are lying to you. They don't factor in way bigger risk, right? So be extremely cautious in the places I say to be cautious with. And then listen to me when I say, so I'll go a little further. Focus more on the west side in the stable suburbs, okay? So any of the inner ring suburbs, for the most part, other than the city of East Cleveland and maybe parts of the city of Newburgh Heights, right? They're solid C neighborhoods. C to B, maybe even a little patches of A. On the west side of Cleveland, almost anything I will take. And the reason for that is even some of them are a little less nice on the west side. Some of them are not nice, but you have a lot of growth on the west side, down from up north near the lake and the river that splits east and west side in Cleveland. Ohio City is a ton of growth, and then it just concentric circles out along the west side. You see growth, and so very consistent just development out across the entire west side. So I see opportunities there, even if you have a little higher risk, right, on some of the areas that aren't as nice on the west side. East side, you don't have quite that same consistent development for years coming out from any circle anywhere. You have little pockets, but all of them are very spotty. They don't seem to take. It's like people don't build a few new houses, put a little development, and then just not much happening. Now that's changed a little bit with they put in a highway right through the center. Well, and you'd think like East Side has University Circle, the Cleveland Clinic, some other things right in the center of some of the worst areas. But even then, it's surprising how little it's actually done to make the area better. You have enclaves, gated communities, and then just plain straight up the worst that can happen in a neighborhood when it's been totally let go and totally abused and all the money's gone to corruption, okay? So it's rough and complicated on the east side, I would say far more than the west side. Beyond that, anything that meets your numbers on any of the suburbs, Lorraine County or Cuyahoga County, go for it, right? There's a couple little areas like in, say, the city of Lorain, city of Elyria that are pretty down. But normally, as long as you look through there, you can look at a few other things in any of these areas. Google Street View. Look at the nearby homes. Zillow has vacancy per zip code. Zillow has crime per zip code. You can look to see, are a bunch of houses torn down in the neighborhood? Probably there's a problem there. And then one of the things I would say to add to this is a lot of people think that they can reduce liability by doing multi-units in a bad area. But tenant perception, especially in a bad area, is basically like the desirability of a multifamily unit lowers it basically a grade. So you get less choice of. So you have that working against you. You could almost say you have a D and now you're going to make it an F because it's a 3 unit. And then the other issue is that it's like you're playing a game show. So when you get to a D and an F, credit goes out the window. You still look at it, but you're not using it to make the decision. I always say, hey, we're just trying to make sure we don't have axe murderers, or perhaps we're taking the best of the worst, right? You only have certain people apply, so you just have to eliminate the worst, right? But again, the best are spotty. They're not a sure thing by any means. They're unstable. They don't have resources to go to the place that they would really probably prefer to be, and they're not very organized in their life. And that drama is going to eventually make its way to you, even if you have a management company, right? And so we might be able to help you with the emotional side of the drama. It's going to cost money, right? So when they don't pay their rent because they can't, because their baby mama stole it, child support wasn't paid, they went to jail, got caught in a drive-by shooting, like any number of things, like the buses stopped running for a little bit and they were, any of those things, right? They didn't have any reserves. There was nothing that allowed. And so occasionally you'll find somebody in these areas, since you put somebody in, you're not sure because there's no good credit, but okay, we'll take the person that will not likely to kill us, right? Okay, you stick them in, you're rolling the dice, or you're spinning the wheel. And I call it like the wheel of death. Like you got 10 choices, like maybe you have a 30% chance that they'll be there for a couple of years, and a 50% chance that they'll default in the next 6 months, right? And then some other chances in between, right? Okay, fine. A single family, you put them in, try them, they churn out, do it again. Third time, hopefully, on average, you'll get somebody that stays a few years, okay? It's gonna be expensive, but if you can hit that person, jackpot. Great cash flow. You got it for a low price, rent it for not that low of a price. The rents are still not as bad as you'd think for the area, right? So you made good cash flow. Maybe you get lucky into the first time, right? Section 8, by the way, is not guaranteed income, okay? Because they inspect, and it's amazing how many tenants destroy the house to the point where it can't pass inspection, or you don't even do the basis on inspection, right? So on a single family, you only have to spin the wheel once or twice or 3 times, and eventually you'll make it work, right? It might take a couple of years to figure it out, but eventually maybe you'll get several more years of a good payment if you're lucky, okay? Now think about this. You have a triplex. Spin the wheel a couple times in the first unit, you put them in, spin the wheel on the second unit, put them in, spin the wheel on the third unit, stick somebody in, right? And you're spinning the wheel on each of these units. At any given time, you're gonna have at least one bad tenant. And there's a good chance that bad tenant isn't just bad because they're not paying, it's a drug dealer, but they're on something, right? They're not exactly real socially working things out with their neighbors. You get what I'm feeling here? Basically, you multiply the risk. So if you already got like a 70% chance of not having a good tenant, and by good, I'm just saying like like they pay their rent, right? Like nothing else. The problem is that one tenant will destroy the whole building. One bad tenant destroys the whole building. So you could have and it takes months, maybe years to find that good tenant for one unit. Once you could have a good tenant and then 2 more chances to destroy that good tenant with the bad tenants, other bad tenants, right? In that triplex. You get like the numbers we're working with, like you don't want to do that, right? And that's beyond all the other implications of like, what happens if your property manager goes there and gets shot? What happens if, for me as a management company, if I send my person there and they go shot? Like, do I just try to find the worst people in the world that don't care about that stuff and then make them contractors and only serve these people with a subsegment of people? I don't care. You get what I'm feeling here? Like this, and you think, can it be that bad? You can hear different stories, but I'm just telling you, I've felt it. I've seen people get shot at our units. Not a good feeling, right? I've had people come to our office with guns. Not cool. We've had people chase our contractors with knives. Not okay, right? You want to be part of that? And honestly, if you don't, I get it. It's all about money sometimes, but like it's gonna eventually come to the pocketbook, right? Like, because usually this all comes down to people aren't paying, right? At the end of the day, like you could escape a lot of the drama, but eventually you're not gonna get paid because of this drama, because no one wants to live. A lot of people have their own drama, but they don't want to have someone else's drama on them, and they don't want to be threatened with a gun. So, or worried that you're gonna get mugged by their person in the same building as they are. And so what I'm saying is, maybe I'm talking a little bit long, but and maybe this doesn't apply to you. We have a variety of people with different opinions on this, but some people come here thinking that they're like, I'm going to invest in the penny stocks of real estate. And just recognize, at least if you do that, get a single family, do your best to make it safe and maybe above grade, right? So that you can class it and get a tenant that, so like, maybe it's a D area, but you do you put granite in it. And I've done that, by the way. I've taken lesser areas and put granite. And what? Granite, by the way, is it'll last a long time. So granite's it's a luxury item, but also it's harder to destroy, right? It's not impossible. I've seen people destroy granite, but it might actually be a nice thing to put in one of those, right? And suddenly someone's like, oh, I can get that here? Maybe I was going to be able to move to the next grade, but this is right next to where my family grew up. I'll live here. I'm saying so someone that's improved themselves would want to stay and you improve the area and you have a higher likelihood and you put it in a single family house, right? And maybe you add some security windows and a nice light on the side and a privacy fence. Suddenly you change it. I call it upclassing, right? So that is like an additive, it's the class, right? Versus a multifamily downs the class, right? And so look at it that way. Try to look at this matrix of risk and instead of looking at the numbers first, I would look at the area and then look at the numbers you can get in the areas that you want. Right. One other thing in terms of numbers, if the rent's under $1,200 on a private pay, walk away. Okay, just do that. That's probably a higher rule than any of the other areas. So just look at the rent. What does Zillow say the rent is? Or look around and see what people are asking in that zip code for rent on Zillow. And that'll tell you, hey, probably you should stay away from anything. You'll just off the top, so top grade, eliminate all those problems off the top, right? It's just not worth it, guys. We all want to make a profit in doing any business. And even if you can, loss of joy is not worth it. So I hope this was enlightening. Not everybody gets this. For some people, it's just so outside their brain. They're like, oh, I'll tell it and they won't hear it. They'll learn afterwards. They have to make the mistake for themselves. I get it. But some of these I won't manage. Just so feel free to ask us. You can email our representatives and they'll tell us if you're looking for a house and you're going to want to manage with us afterwards. We'll tell you if we won't manage it. And we can probably give you a range of rent within minutes. So feel free to email our BDM once you talk to him. By the way, go ahead and schedule on the link in this video to talk to our representative about possible property management. We'd love to talk to you about that. And looking forward to talking to you tomorrow for Section 7, Day 7, further risks. So these are more like Cleveland specific risks that you need to think about, different from just what we've already talked about in terms of price and risks for tenants and things like that in areas. So look forward to that.